Welcome back, troglodytes, to the Trogly's Guitar Show. Today we have the Epiphone Snow Falcon, the signature guitar of Brendon Small. The guy who made Metalocalypse has his own band that he basically does everything for called Dethklok. And he's just a really creative guy in general, so definitely check out some of his stuff if you haven't before. But let's talk about this guitar today. If you think it looks familiar because there's a Gibson version, you would be correct in saying that. In 2013, Gibson also did a version of this guitar. They retailed about $14.99 new, according to some of the old Sweetwater listings. There was 500 of them made. They came stock with the Burstbucker 1 and 2 pickups, with a hard case and all the usual Gibson appointments. Essentially, what made those guitars special in my eyes is the phenolic fretboard. It's kind of like Richlight, but more akin to a maple fretboard in the way it feels. It kind of has almost a lacquered feel to it. But it made the guitar look so cool. So I've had a few of the Gibson versions, but that was before my videos were, good at all. But I remembered liking those guitars, but quality control was pretty bad on those. A lot of those got damaged, and you would see them show up on eBay all the time for relatively cheap prices because of that. But at $14.99, those things were a steal. I remember buying them at $1,100, and you can't touch those things at those prices anymore due to them being limited edition and, not many surviving. Prices have gone up. You normally have to pay around $2,000 for the Gibson version. And Brendon also had a signature Explorer called the Thunder Horse. Now, I do have a proper review of one of those on my channel, so definitely go ahead and check that out. But for 2016-2017, Brendon worked with Epiphone this time, and they basically just re-released the same two guitars. You have an Epiphone Thunder Horse, and you have an Epiphone Snow Falcon. Now, I've been having a hard time trying to figure out how much these things sell for new, because doing some searching back on the internet when they were released, it looks like they were originally $7.99. Up until yesterday, they were listed new on Guitar Center's website for $9.99. This morning when I checked, it was $8.99, so apparently these things just change prices all the time. But they are still available new for around $1,000. But what's different between the Epiphone version to the limited edition Gibson? Well, here's what's great. I'm a big Gibson fan. I don't review many Epiphones, but honestly, I'm going to tell you, just skip the signature Gibsons because they're very expensive. They're kind of collector's items, highly desirable. But these guys, they have more features. First off, the Gibson version does not have any fancy electronics. The Epiphones do. It's the exact same Gibson pickups, and that's why I love these Epiphones, because they actually have decent pickups in them stock. So that means, once again, Gibson USA Burstbucker 1, Burstbucker 2. But, as I was saying, you've got fancy electronics here. So this is a coil split, so you can now get single coil sounds. Now, I found when I was recording with this guitar for that intro, just in case you're curious, that is a Dethklok song called Skyhunter. I kind of mixed some other elements from like Thunder Horse and just Brendon's general style to kind of stylize it a little bit differently. But I found that the single coil sounds is what I like. It kind of made it less muddy. It helped cut through the mix and sound better, in my opinion. So, super useful feature. But another thing I didn't know until I got this guitar is it has a built-in kill switch. Where is it? It's the pot. Watch it. It just pushes down like this. So it's kind of like the Buckethead signature guitar, where you can do kill switch style effects like that. Now, can you play Buckethead riffs with this? Quick tapping. Yeah, you can kind of do it, but it's nowhere near as easy as those red arcade style buttons. Because what I find to happen as you're pushing it, your tone knob gets rolled off. And on top of that, it's in an absolute garbage location, unless you have a 90-degree angle jack. Because if you got the straight one sticking out, it's not very comfortable to get to. So that's a small complaint. But even if you switch these two, then your coil split would be inconvenient. But those are two awesome features, and they're really cool to have. So some other differences between this one and the Gibson version. Obviously this is a poly finish versus nitro, so it's gonna feel more heavily lacquered. And some people will say, oh, that robs you of some tone. Personally, for me, I think it's just a feel difference. I mean, it doesn't feel like wood anymore. It feels like a highly finished product. Whereas the Gibson versions with those thin nitro finishes, you still feel like the guitar's made out of wood. I mean, it sounds dumb, but that's just kind of how it is. But the biggest thing for me between the Gibson and the Epiphone version, and the reason why I didn't really like the Epiphone version before getting it, is the finish is darker on the edges. On the Gibson version, this dark snowburst edge is almost non-existent. In person, you can just barely tell it's there. However, in photos, this thing always looked like it had a super dark edge, and I felt made it look ugly. Now, I'm happy to say, in person, it blends a lot better than it does in photos. So if that's the one thing that stops you from buying one of these Epiphone versions, don't worry about it. It's really not that bad. The woods used are the same. It's a mahogany body with a mahogany neck. Obviously, the grades of wood will be different between the two guitars. And these guys are made in China, whereas the other ones are made in the USA. So if that means something to you, that's something to consider. The Epiphones also get nice Grover tuners, so nothing cheap on here. The only thing where they really super differ is the hardware. I mean, you have Epiphone hardware on this one, metric bridge and whatnot, whereas the Gibson version has the Nashville styles. These do have binding along the edge of the fretboard as well as the body, but, you know, the Gibson version would have the fret nibs, whereas the Epiphone version does not. So overall, having owned both, I'm really happy with this Epiphone one. Brendon said it was exactly like the Gibson version, and honestly, I would agree with him. Now, I don't have them both, so I can't compare them side to side and get like those little nitpicky details for you guys, but I think this guitar is a home run. So now that we've talked a little bit about this guitar, let's throw it on the workbench and make sure all these online specs are actually correct. Well, they weren't lying. They really did put Gibson Burstbuckers in here. You've got the Burstbucker 1 in the neck and the 2 in the bridge. It also looks like they would have had to have used Gibson rings. So a lot of the value from these guitars, I'm sure you could sell just these pickups for at least $200 because people dig the double white and double creams. In the circuit, the neck pickup reads about 7.5, and in the bridge, it reads about 8. Remember, you can coil split those to get about half the reading to get some nice single coil tones out of them as well. And obviously, killswitch pot, that takes it down to nothing. The cavities themselves on Chinese guitars, they usually are pretty scary. Here you can see you just have some random divots in the wood for some reason and a bunch of paint splotches. There you can see what the neck tenon's looking like. And then in here it looks like you have like a Chinese symbol or something. If anybody knows what that means, let me know, but I would guess it has something to do with like the Snow Falcon or something. Your bridge is kind of based on the Gibson ABR1, but obviously it's Epiphone branded, and it's done with studs. It's not drilled directly into the guitar. And something I like about the metric bridges is you can adjust them using a screwdriver if you have a flat head on you. And the tailpiece, once again, it's Epiphone branded on the back here. And what's kind of interesting, they have these little tongues right here that kind of helps grip it onto the post here. So sometimes it's hard to get the Epiphone ones off. It's a little bit hard to tell, but right there you can see the mahogany wood exposed. So it is indeed a mahogany body. The Guitar Center website calls this a maple fretboard, so I'm not really sure if it's like a maple base and then the phenolic goes on top. That might be the case. I'm not really familiar with how these are produced. Now here along the edges you can kind of see where the binding truly ends. So you might mistake that as like a defect line, but it's not. I just wiped this fretboard down with a little bit of Goo Gone. And with your Epiphone truss rod cover off, you can see the truss rod's in there. You just got to use one of those large Allen keys to adjust it. I get a 1.68 inch nut width with neck thickness at the first fret of 0.9 inches. and at the 12th fret 9.3. So it's a fairly even feeling neck up and down. But it does get wider as you go up, as at the 12th fret you're at 2.11 inches. Alright, and now the back plate. This is what I'm really curious about. Now this covering is on pretty tight, so I'm going to show you guys a little trick. I bought one of these things from China. It was like $3 shipped to my door. It's just a little suction cup. It's meant for pulling off dents in your car and stuff. I find they work amazingly. That way you don't have to flip your guitar upside down and, shake it around and risk damaging it. So this looks like USA type wiring to me, as this is the same type of pot that you'll see in like the Buckethead signature guitars. That's your standard push-pull from this era. But this is what has been intriguing me, the killswitch pot. The branding on it is shadow, and you can see it kind of looks like a push-pull, and the fact that it looks like it has the double pot to it. Then you've got your capacitor right there. So that's a really interesting invention. I could definitely see myself putting those in a few guitars myself. But what's kind of interesting here is they leave enough room right here that you could potentially install another pot if you wanted to have 2 volumes to control both, or if you wanted to add some other switch to do who knows what. The neck is supposed to be mahogany, but I didn't find any exposed places. You've got the Epiphone branding, as well as the Grover tuners, and the serial number. This particular example weighs 7 pounds right on the nose. Now that we know about this guitar, let's go ahead and hear how it sounds. that we know how this instrument sounds, let's go ahead and review its condition. I got this one as part of a trade. It was a 3-for-1 for a Les Paul Custom. And honestly, if the guy didn't have this guitar in it, I probably wouldn't have took the trade because I've always been curious about these guitars. This guitar is in pretty good shape, but it does have a smoke and pet odor to it. Now it's been airing out a little bit, but you'll still notice it. But face of the headstock here, the poly finishes, they still show the same scratches, but they usually don't wear away as quickly. The fretboard's in good shape, frets show very minor wear. You've got some medium jumbos on it. And the thing with this white fretboard is it'll show fingerboard gunk. Something to notice is I'm pretty sure the binding started out this white color and the smoke in that guy's home has started to turn it to a yellow color. So that's something I want you to be aware of. But I think that kind of happens to all of these naturally as they age as well, because you can see it also happened along the binding. Hey, that could just be because the white binding that they used naturally had a tan tint to it anyways. The body is very prone to fingerprint marks, but I don't see any like major nicks or dings out of the top anywhere. But we're running the light along here so you can see it all. Back of the guitar, serial number 16, 10, 20, 28, 29. that was kind of fun to say. I don't know anything about Epiphone serial numbers. I would guess it means 2016 though. But something that's kind of funny is the Epiphone decal. It says 2015 and then it says 2016. I'm pretty sure I've seen that quite a few times. I'm guessing it was made in 2015 as a 2016 model. And that lines up with the original owner's story, because he said he pre-ordered this the day they were released. Now there is kind of a painting irregularity here. You can kind of see a small paint run right here. Now it's not like a crack to the neck or anything, but it is a small factory blemish there. The only other like quality control paint not being perfect thing that I see is this dark edge. You can see it kind of sprayed up to the neck, but then there's a little white area right there. It's a little bit of a visual eyesore, but I would guess most of them have that. I mean, it's kind of a tough judgment call. Should you paint it up till there to complete the burst, or should they have just left the side of the neck alone and just had it on the body? I think either way it would look a little bit weird, but the neck profile, it's pretty chunky. It's super rounded in like a D neck profile, but you know, it's got a pretty good girth to it. It feels good in your hands, especially when you're playing metal. Back of the instrument, it's got some light scratches, but you know, for the most part, this thing's actually in pretty good shape. Take a quick look around the edges again. Pretty much the only thing to know here is the binding is a slightly off-white yellow color. But I say we're looking pretty good here. Under Blacklight, yeah, we don't have a lot to show. Sometimes poly finishes glow, sometimes they don't. It would show us if somebody did a touch-up of some sort. So that's what this test is for here. But everything's looking good to me. Take a look at the neck and that painting irregularity down there. But everything looks good. These do not come with hard shell cases, but a limited edition gig bag, hey, that's pretty cool. It says Brendon Small's Galacticon on it. I think that's what this whole run was for, was advertising this new album. And you also have Epiphone up here. But, you know, Brendon even said himself, yes, this thing's gonna get dirty, but it shows you get out of your house once in a while, and that's a good thing. So this one has some natural wear, but the original owner also spilt pop on it. Honestly, I say this one's ruined. I mean, it's got a lot of staining, especially at the bottom here. So don't expect this thing to be clean, but it is the original gig bag. And from a review standpoint, it is fairly padded and it's pretty nice. And this also smells more like smoke and pets. These are issued with certificate of authenticities. They look just like the Gibson version, don't they? But oh my goodness, and feel, you can tell this is much cheaper to produce. Especially these sheets. The Gibson versions, they're usually like slightly laminated or at least a thick piece of paper. This is just flimsy stuff. But, you know, it's a nice little feature there. And inside here, you just have a bunch of extra paperwork and whatnot. If you think you might be interested in being the next owner of this Epiphone Snow Falcon, feel free to check out that link in the description that will take you to the Reverb for Sale ad. Thank you, Troglodytes, for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.